Africa, a continent of breathtaking beauty, a land blessed with vast natural resources, home to the world's youngest and fastest growing population. Yet despite its extraordinary potential, one question has echoed across generations. Why has Africa struggled to fully transform its wealth into lasting prosperity? For decades, the answer to that question has been debated by historians, economists, political leaders, and ordinary citizens. Some point to the lasting effects of colonialism. Others speak about governance, institutions, global markets, education, or conflict. There is no single answer, but across the continent, a growing number of African leaders have called for something they believe is self-reliance. A future where Africa adds value to its own resources, builds its own industries, invests in its own people, and speaks with a stronger voice in global affairs. Their ideas have inspired hope, sparked debate, and challenged old ways of thinking, but an important question still remains. Can these visions become reality? Or will the obstacles prove greater than the ambitions? In this documentary, we explore the words, the ideas, and the vision of several African leaders who have spoken about shaping a different future for the continent. Through history, through their own speeches, and through the stories behind their vision. The story of Africa cannot be told through a single country, nor can it be explained by a single generation. It is a story that stretches across thousands of years, a story of powerful kingdoms, remarkable civilizations, brilliant cultures, and people whose resilience has shaped the course of history. Yet the Africa we see today is also the product of centuries of transformation. Colonial rule redrew borders, independence movements reshaped nations, and globalization connected Africa to a rapidly changing world. Today, the continent stands at another historic crossroads. Africa is home to more than 1 billion people. It possesses some of the world's most valuable natural resources. And by the end of this century, it is expected to have one of the largest working-age populations on Earth. For many, these are not just statistics. They are opportunities. Opportunities to build industries, strengthen education, expand technology, improve healthcare, increase trade within Africa, and create economies that generate more value from the continent's own resources. Across different countries, several African leaders have spoken about these goals in their own ways. Their backgrounds are different. Their policies are different. Their leadership styles are different. But many have shared a common message, that Africa should play a stronger role in shaping its own future. In the next chapters, we explore the ideas they have presented, the challenges they have faced, and the vision they have described for the future of Africa. We begin in Rwanda. Before we understand the vision, we must first understand the history. In 1994, Rwanda experienced one of the darkest chapters in modern African history. In just 100 days, hundreds of thousands of people were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi. Communities were destroyed, families were torn apart, and the nation's institutions were left in ruins. When the violence finally came to an end, Rwanda faced a question that seemed almost impossible to answer. How do you rebuild a nation after such devastation? Roads could be rebuilt, schools could be reopened, hospitals could be restored. But rebuilding trust, rebuilding institutions, and rebuilding hope would take far longer. Over the years that followed, Rwanda introduced policies focused on national reconstruction, public services, economic development, and technology. Supporters have often described the country's transformation as an example of long-term planning and disciplined governance. At the same time, international organizations and observers have also raised debates and concerns on issues such as political freedoms, human rights, and democratic space. These different perspectives continue to shape discussions about Rwanda's development today. Throughout this period, President Paul Kagame repeatedly spoke about responsibility, self-reliance, and the belief that Africa should play a stronger role in determining its own future. One of his recurring messages has been that sustainable development cannot depend entirely on external assistance, but must also be driven by African leadership, African institutions, and African citizens. In his own words,
You really need to stop this superiority complex nonsense about human rights. You think you are the only ones who respect human rights, or others it's about violating human rights. No, we've fought for human rights and freedoms of our people much better and more than anyone, including you people who keep talking about this nonsense. Where we have taken our country from and where it is now speaks for itself. The rest of the stories just comes from this complex. You know, these two worlds where there are people who know everything about human rights and all kinds of things, and another world where people are just people who don't know. But these are our human rights. It's not, when we respect the things we respect in our countries, it's not for you, it's not for anybody else, it's for ourselves.
Is it not a universal
you don't sit
right?
there. Yes, it is universal, but you don't sit there. If it is universal and you believe it, then you don't become the judge yourself. You don't start telling the others what to do, what they should not to do, or that what they are doing is not to your satisfaction. Who are you?
Well, I'm not sure if we're talking about me personally.
Well, you are the one actually raising these questions. So I think you better interpret it properly so that it is well understood.
Okay.
I could see you are asking questions in a manner that you want to influence the ones listening to us, but that's not correct.
Okay. Yeah. I'm raising it once again in the context of the United Nations Development Goals.
No, United Nations is us. You see, United Nations is not something alien somewhere else. Yeah. It's actually us. We participate.
And the framework for this entire development.
And by the way, I had been leading the Millennium Development Goals before Sustainable Development Goals. I was the co-chair of that, with other leaders and some of the leaders in Europe. So you don't turn around, it's like you want...
So you believe that there should be scrutiny on human rights in Europe, in Africa,
No,
in all
I believe
countries?
that you shouldn't be there belittling Africans or leaders of Africa who are trying to...
Oh no, but the conversation about migration is a real conversation about human rights. So you believe that there are valid human rights concerns to be taken into account in this conversation?
Even in Europe, not in Africa.
Not in Africa?
In Europe. In Europe, not only in Africa.
Not, of course.
Yes.
Well, thank you both very much. Unfortunately, that is...
President Kagame's speeches have attracted attention both inside and outside Africa. To some, they represent a call for confidence, accountability, and African-led development. To others, they raise important questions about how development, political participation, and human rights should be balanced. Regardless of these differing perspectives, one message has remained consistent throughout many of his public addresses. Africa's future, he argues, should increasingly be shaped by Africans themselves. But Rwanda is not the only country where such ideas have been expressed. Hundreds of kilometers to the west, another leader would capture international attention with a different style, but a similar call for sovereignty and self-determination. In September 2022, the political landscape of Burkina Faso changed once again. A young army captain named Ibrahim Traoré became the country's transitional leader during a period marked by insecurity, political instability, and growing public frustration. Burkina Faso had spent years confronting armed groups that had displaced millions of people and placed enormous pressure on communities across the country. For many citizens, security had become the nation's most urgent priority. As Ibrahim Traoré took office, he promised a different direction. He spoke about national sovereignty, economic independence, and the belief that Burkina Faso should make decisions based on its own national interests. His speeches quickly attracted attention across Africa. Many young Africans saw in his words a renewed call for dignity, confidence, and self-determination. Others questioned whether those ambitions could be achieved while the country continued to face serious security and humanitarian challenges. Whatever the opinion, one thing became clear. Ibrahim Traoré had become one of the most talked about political figures on the African continent. In his own speeches, he repeatedly argued that Africa should process more of its own resources, invest in its own industries, and reduce dependence on foreign assistance. His message resonated far beyond Burkina Faso. In his own words,
Musa kwaye kabe.
Okay.
Ton Suria no.
Inshallah, nazim same.
Suria no.
Mam sura men be basaloka.
Mbuma me.
Voilà.
Mbuma me.
Parce que en tout cas,
nyam sumbe waka wundu bundinga. Il kangam pelen ton kande. Ya yuma yobe.
Ouais.
La ton sumbe kana moi.
Ouais.
Kedam ti ton ataka yul tatwa. Capitaine meda mikam tabia kana. Fa dépolé. Kat simpanya puni la kon me du gama me on bana yika mbaje di
en tout cas
ah
katay
di la ki ko
tenga kana yika de
ya wotonde mosa ton me tara rawd mosa
voilà
ay te bana ye do ya wonde do singa
voilà nazim
ya
wotonde so mam surno mame ewa yande ba wotone
inshallah
karum bi sa fan cheme
inshallah
manda kala
inshallah
Comment il est dans Geopolitics?
En
tout cas, il est dans le jeu. Inch'Allah, ça m'a pas soma.
Inch'Allah.
Voilà, tu n'as pas fait pas comme soma parce que maman d'avec 2022. Ah, comment il est quand
il y a tout. Et mais il y a tout qui est taura.
Voilà. La nazim ça mais. Technicien na mawa mais. Be nambo zin soma. Ah. Na wa tout fora na mangé. Voilà, tu pas. D'accord.
La moi ça y a la fin kenda wa han cher.
D'accord. Suria na soma.
Suria no.
Na wa man opération na man 5 jours.
Inshallah.
Pam ti never find pam chen.
Koi kabe.
Le déplacement ma ya wuso ha.
Kitwa
voilà, kitwa wa mais. Sans pam ni opération na man ta jours. Pam install bam fa.
Ya shi.
Tadam ti barso
na buima mo.
Voilà, na buima soma. Donc na singa me.
Muguma be.
Ya sin wa na man ti bon opération na ma pa 20 to.
Ya
sa nyinga. Lam ha haya. Zinya kuya min don.
Koi kabe.
Twan singa me.
Koi kabe.
Beautiful.
Aye ngol do singa. Ton Suria no.
D'accord.
Ton Suria no.
Baraka. Merci beaucoup.
Ton famille politique, ton to cabinet sécurité, ton kama yam yung la min to.
Inshallah.
Ton samba be la harfa, ton be ne yamba.
Baraka merci beaucoup.
Ya woto.
D'accord. En tout cas, je suis très content.
Inshallah.
Baraka.
Inshallah.
Et puis il a maram daratum wa.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Ya woto.
Il amrunde.
Ya woto.
Voilà, baraka.
Samba ki fa be ne.
D'accord.
Yung min to.
Inshallah. Baraka.
Ya woto.
Merci beaucoup.
Ya woto. Onda songa.
Amin.
Onda guya.
Amin.
Onda guya.
Ona redo se.
Inshallah.
Merci. Baraka.
Ton mandi la doaka.
Baraka.
Onda guya.
Inshallah.
La nyaria.
Amin.
La songa.
Amin.
La koyo woko.
Amin. Baraka.
Tiyini kemba.
Voilà, Inch'Allah. Inch'Allah. Si tu comprends pas, je vais traduire pour toi après.
Awunda me.
Ça va, ça nyura makare. Yara gaba. Ça yigi o bala yara mas. Yam samba nanyu yam rama fasa ba yam. OK, ça m'appelle en tout cas partenariat. Ton bon Suria. Nan liba mais ton wanya yam ton solo wallahi.
Ton me Suria no.
Barko.
Ton mani rabe mi.
D'accord.
Pasaro bebe la.
Partenariat. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Okay.
Since taking office, Captain Traore has become a symbol of hope for some and a subject of concern for others. Supporters argue that he has encouraged conversations about African independence, economic transformation, and national ownership of development. Critics, however, continue to raise questions about the country's security situation, governance, and the long-term path back to constitutional civilian rule. These different perspectives remain part of an ongoing debate. Yet beyond politics, one message continues to echo across many of his public speeches, that Africa's greatest strength lies not beneath its soil, but within its people. Their creativity, their determination, and their ability to build their own future. But long before this new generation of leaders emerged, another African president had already spent decades speaking about industrialization, agriculture, and adding value to Africa's resources. Our next stop, Uganda. Every nation searches for its own path to development. For Uganda, President Yoweri, Museveni has spent decades arguing that Africa cannot achieve lasting prosperity by exporting raw materials alone. Coffee, cotton, cocoa, minerals, These resources have generated wealth for centuries. But too often, the greatest value has been created after they leave African soil. Throughout his presidency, Museveni has repeatedly called for industrialization. His message has remained remarkably consistent. Produce locally, process locally, manufacture locally, and create jobs for African people. He has argued that exporting raw materials while importing finished products limits economic growth and prevents countries from capturing the full value of their own resources. For Museveni, industrialization is not simply an economic policy. It is a strategy for national transformation, a strategy that he believes can reduce poverty, create employment, and strengthen economic independence. In his own words,
You told me when I mentioned Barack Obama's position on this that you said, Western governments and leaders, they need to be careful. Let's just explore that idea a bit further. You said not so long ago, Western countries do not listen carefully. They are full of themselves. They think they know everything. Sounds like you are rather frustrated in your relations with what are supposed to be some of your closest partners in Western capitals.
Well, they are our close partners, but they should avoid, like this one of saying, tying aid to promoting homosexuality. I can tell you many African people will not accept it. And it will be a very big mistake.
Yeah, let's just talk then about what you are doing with the United States, for example. At the moment, I believe they have 100 military advisors working closely with your government. I know they've given you tens of millions of dollars of military assistance, all of it, I think, aimed to fight the Lord's Resistance Army, the insurgent group who've done so much damage, killed so many people in the north of your country. Is it your belief that with US assistance, even though the leader Joseph Kony is no longer in your country, that you can now, once and for all, destroy the Lord's Resistance Army?
We defeated that group. That's why they fled very far from Uganda. They are now in Central African Republic and very, very far, about 1,000 miles away.
So what are these military advisors for then?
To help working with the US people and with those countries where the remnants of Kony's people are, to help those countries to stop Kony from killing and kidnapping.
So I suppose my question is, are Ugandan forces going to go after Kony and his people, wherever they are?
They're already doing it.
So you're going to go into the Central African Republic?
We are already there.
Yeah, and you're going to take this to the very end. You think there is a military solution to this, do you?
Oh yes, oh yes. There is a military solution. It has already pacified the whole of Uganda. The whole of Southern Sudan is peaceful from Kony activities. He's only now in Central African Republic. We can hunt him there, and there are just a few remnants. They are much less than.
Over the years, Uganda has expanded investment in manufacturing, agriculture, and infrastructure. Supporters point to these efforts as important steps toward long-term economic development. Others argue that challenges remain, including youth unemployment, governance, and the need for broader economic opportunities. These discussions continue both within Uganda and beyond. Yet one idea continues to appear throughout many of President Museveni's speeches. Africa should no longer be satisfied with exporting opportunity. It should create opportunity at home. It should educate its people, build its industries, invest in science and technology, and compete in the global economy through innovation rather than dependence. But while Uganda focused on industrialization, another West African leader introduced a different phrase that would inspire conversations across the continent. A phrase that challenged Africa to imagine a future beyond foreign aid. Our next destination, Ghana. Africa's future cannot be built on dependency alone. That was the message repeatedly delivered by Ghana's former president Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Throughout his presidency, he challenged African nations to rethink their economic future. Not by rejecting international partnerships, but by reducing dependence on foreign aid. He believed that true development begins when nations build strong institutions, invest in education, encourage private enterprise, and create economies capable of financing their own future. His vision became widely known through one powerful phrase, Africa beyond aid. To many Africans, those words represented confidence, responsibility, and a belief that the continent possesses everything it needs to succeed. But turning that vision into reality has never been simple. Economic pressures, global financial crises, rising public debt, and unemployment continue to challenge many African economies. Even so, the conversation he helped inspire continues across the continent. In his own words,
when you hear all these stories, Mr. President, I mean, Ghana was one of the rising stars of, the economic recovery of Africa, so to speak. But when you hear about all these issues with the economy now, what exactly went wrong?
I think it's gone wrong. We're part of those who have been very badly affected by what has gone on in the last 2 years. Until 2020, since I came into office, 2017, 2018, 2019, the beginning of 2020, we were growing our economy at about 7%, the GDP growth rate. One of the fastest growing economies in the world was the Ghanaian economy, even in the crunch year of 2020. When the economies of the world dived, Ghana, we still managed a positive rate of growth because the fundamentals of our economy are strong. But it has been a difficult task for all the economies of the world. I think it is important that when you're making the kind of provocative statements that you're making, that you situate yourself, you speak as if you're living in the same time as you and I, where the world economy as a whole has gone through very difficult times. And there are several things that we're doing, which is in the line of being able to pick up our economy again. I have no doubt that next year, if you were to come and speak to me like you're doing today, we will have a different set of facts for us to look at.
President Akufo-Addo often argued that Africa's greatest resource is not gold, nor oil, nor diamonds, but its people. He encouraged governments to invest in education, entrepreneurship, innovation, and regional trade. Supporters viewed his message as a call for confidence and long-term planning. Others questioned how quickly such ambitions could be achieved in the face of economic challenges affecting many countries. Yet despite these debates, one idea continued to resonate. Africa's future should increasingly be financed, built, and shaped by Africans themselves. As conversations about economic independence continued across West and East Africa, another leader in the Horn of Africa began speaking about unity, reform, and national transformation. Our journey now takes us to Ethiopia.
The worthless rock.
Ethiopia is one of Africa's oldest civilizations, a nation with a rich history, deep cultural heritage, and a unique place on the continent. But like many countries, it has also faced political tensions, economic challenges, and periods of conflict that have shaped its modern history. In 2018, a new prime minister stepped into office with a promise of change. His name was Abiy Ahmed. He spoke of reform, national unity, economic transformation, and a future built on peace and development. His early initiatives attracted international attention. Political prisoners were released. Diplomatic relations with neighboring Eritrea were restored after years of conflict. And many believed Ethiopia was entering a new chapter. In recognition of those efforts, Abiy Ahmed was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. Yet governing a nation as large and diverse as Ethiopia brought enormous challenges. Political tensions increased. Armed conflict later erupted in parts of the country, and debates over reconciliation, security, and national unity became central to Ethiopia's future. Throughout these developments, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed continued to speak about self-reliance, economic reform, agricultural development, and the importance of building a stronger Ethiopia through the efforts of its own people. In his own words,
"We really want the years of misunderstandings with the Eritrean government to end, and we will play our part. I would express our readiness to solve our differences through dialogue in the interests of the two peoples who are not only intertwined in interests but also in blood. I call on the Eritrean government to take the same stand."
Well, for a closer look at that story, let's talk to Mohamed Adomo. He's the editor of the O-Pride website. He's joining me now from Washington. Thank you for making time. Do you think that this new Prime Minister will be able to bring about some real change?
I think it remains to be seen, but from his speech today, he was brought to power, as you know, on the back of relentless anti-government protests, and he has a widespread appeal and support in Oromia, where he comes from. But today with this speech, he's expanded his base, he's expanded his support. I think that is going to serve him as he takes on very powerful interests, and I think whether or not he will be able to deliver real, necessary, much needed reforms and political reconciliation, we'll have to see what he does. But his tone today was very conciliatory to the opposition, and he hit a lot of good notes and sent a very helpful message for all Ethiopians.
Now, you've talked about...
Supporters describe his vision as an effort to modernize Ethiopia while strengthening national unity. Critics argue that the country continues to face serious political and humanitarian challenges that require lasting solutions. These different perspectives remain part of an ongoing national and international conversation. Even so, one message appears consistently throughout many of his speeches: that development requires patience, determination, and the willingness of citizens to build their country's future together. Ethiopia's story reminds us that transformation is rarely simple. It demands leadership, sacrifice, dialogue, and resilience. But our journey across Africa is not over. To understand another vision of development, we travel south to Tanzania, where one leader became widely known for his emphasis on discipline, public accountability, and national development.
The worthless rock.
Every leader leaves behind a different legacy. Some are remembered for their speeches, others for the decisions they make. In Tanzania, President John Pombe Magufuli became known for his direct leadership style and his emphasis on discipline, public accountability, and national development. Shortly after taking office in 2015, he introduced measures aimed at reducing government spending, strengthening tax collection, and increasing investment in public infrastructure. Roads, railways, bridges, schools, and healthcare projects became central to his development agenda. Magufuli frequently argued that African governments should make better use of their own resources before relying heavily on outside support. His speeches often encouraged hard work, efficiency, and responsible leadership. For many Tanzanians, these ideas reflected a commitment to improving public services and strengthening the economy. Others, however, raised concerns about political freedoms, media independence, and the protection of civil liberties during his presidency. These differing perspectives continue to shape discussions about his legacy. Yet one message remained clear throughout many of his public addresses: that national development requires discipline, accountability, and the determination to place the interests of citizens at the center of public service, in his own words.
Whereas in Namibia, for example, the number of Chinese people living here in the meantime is 4 times as much as, for example, the German community. And so far, it's not precisely the same what takes place all over the world. There are differences. And what I'm...
Mr. Speaker, what is your problem with that? Why does it become a problem? it looks like it's a more European problem than our problem. You are so sorry for us. I don't see... Chinese will never come and play around here. As Germans not allowed to do that. Which Germans are doing, by the way. You talk about Chinese. We allow Germans to come offer visas here. Red carpet. Our people are harassed in Germany. Even diplomatic passport holders in Germany. And you come in here, Germans come in here as they want. So why Chinese talk about Germans? How you are treating us there? Chinese don't treat us like that. Diplomatic passport. We're coming back from Geneva. These people were held up at the airport. Just now, last week, in Germany. We know what we will handle our own country. Don't be sorry for us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Every time Westerner comes, it's about Chinese. What is the problem? Is Namibia ever got enough Chinese? Did you tell Namibians Chinese have overtaken Namibia? Not on my watch. I told Chinese ambassador, I'm not your puppet. It was impressed everywhere. So please, respect us. That's all I would say. It shows this respect that we are children who are going to be cajoled by Chinese or so. No. Chinese are coming in infrastructure all over Africa. And I saw in America, they are there. Who bailed the Americans out from the financial crisis? Chinese money is there. So why small Namibia, who fought Germans, even Germans were fighting with you. You are tough people. Now Chinese will come and, after our sovereignty, come and decolonize us? You think so? Germans cannot succeed, even those Germans who are here. So please, at every European coming is about Chinese. And Chinese, we are dealing with them. Then Germany. They come in Germany, then America, France, they bought up France. So Namibia is not bought up yet. So please, as I said, I told Chinese, envy, we are not going to exchange any the old colonial or imperialism with new imperialism.
President Magufuli's leadership remains a subject of discussion across Africa. His supporters remember his focus on infrastructure, fiscal discipline, and government efficiency. His critics continue to debate aspects of governance and civil liberties during his administration. Together, these perspectives form part of a broader conversation about leadership and development on the African continent. As our journey comes to an end, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Africa's future will not be shaped by one leader, one government, or one generation alone. It will be shaped by millions of people, working, innovating, learning, building, and believing that the continent's greatest strength lies within its own people.